discussing important issues like innovation, intellectual property, and competition law, as we are in a very critical moment. Now, this is basically the outline of my presentation. Of course, we need to start with looking at how COVID-19 pandemic is around the world. Because if you look at the topic is entitled Market Innovation Post COVID-19 Pandemic. We are not post COVID-19 pandemic yet. We are still struggling with COVID-19. So whatever comes after COVID-19 is something that we have to figure out later. We are still figuring out what we are going to do now while we are having this pandemic. So how is innovation comes into this COVID-19 thing? Very, very much. Innovation comes in by improving our the way we do our work, the way we do our business, the way we do our activities, especially in this COVID-19 where everybody is locked down and having to work remotely. So engineers, architects, designers, and businesses, they started to innovate the way they do things, and a lot of processes are now innovated, like what we're having now. We're having video conferencing instead of having face-to-face conference, which most of us would love to do, because then we can have a cup of coffee and we can chit-chat after our workshop. But what I want to focus today is more on essential medicine, because everybody is looking for a solution. How solution for this health problem is a public health crisis, and it is a global crisis. And I did mention in one of our webinar, we are now in a war, right? We are now in a war, and we need the right weapon and the right medicine to take us out of this pandemic. So where is intellectual property comes into this whole ecosystem very much, because if you look at intellectual property and the way it grew or evolved in Europe, the idea of the philosophy of intellectual property was actually to give incentive for enterprises to innovate, come up with solutions for human problems, and more so when in this pandemic, there are a lot of discourse as to whether the usual theory of intellectual property, where it confers exclusive rights to an individual proprietor or enterprise, is relevant anymore, because we know that with this pandemic, we need to collaborate, cooperate, and whatever solutions that we come up with, it would have to be shared across the globe. I'm not saying that that is going to be an easy thing. There are a lot of challenges that we need to, confront and overcome to come up with that solutions that, everybody is waiting for and sharing it on a global basis. Now, intellectual property is just one of the legal framework that is put in or developed to encourage innovation in the field of pharmaceutical and medical health sciences. But competition policy also plays a lot of role. And if you look at what's happening in Europe, for example, and I'm sure Prof. Koos will be able to share more, the competition office or the competition commission were very busy issuing directive after directive on opening up the market, the need to open up the market to ensure that whatever that we are doing will be able to be the mode now is more opening up rather than closing up or exclusive rights. So competition policy comes very, very important. And if I have the time, I would want to go a bit briefly on Malaysian national policy on intellectual property and competition, and just unearth or highlight some of the important provisions that would relate to pharmaceutical industry. Now, as it is now, this is just reported.
Sorry, Prof. Ida,
yes.
Can you enlarge the slide for the benefit of the viewers?
Yeah, is it enlarged? Is it not enlarged?
It is not yet. I think there is one. I think you can see the bigger. Okay. This is it. This.
Okay. All right. No. Correct. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
This is okay.
All right. if you look at the data yesterday, there are now about 40 million COVID-19 cases around the world. 28 million of them has actually recovered, and it has caused about 1 million deaths. And it was not a new, it's not an old pandemic. All right, it's quite new. I mean, the first reported case in China was declared 31st December 2019. It's not even a year, and by 3 months it was already declared as pandemic. And this is something that is new to the global community. I'm sure there are pandemic before that, new in the sense that it's new in this century, and new in international treaties on IP, especially because, you know, when Doha Declaration was discussed and agreed upon in 2001, the epidemics that were you know, bugging everybody was actually AIDS. And, you know, it's not the same level as COVID-19. The kind of threat is not the same level as COVID-19 as we are facing now. So the race to find a solution is very, very urgent. Now, I would like to focus my presentation on essential medicines and the role of intellectual property. Now, if you look at intellectual property and how it has been able to encourage the development of pharmaceutical products and processes in this world, we can always tie it up to the UN Sustainable Goals, right? There is this particular goal 3, which emphasizes on health, lives, and well-being. And if you look at this goal, there are a number of indicators, right? What it propagates is universal health coverage, support for research and vaccines and medicines, and it emphasizes on the need for or whatever medical facilities that we are coming up with. It emphasizes on geographical accessibility, non-discrimination, affordability, and information accessibility. Now, these 4 indicators itself pose a lot of challenge on the development and further distribution and supply of vaccines if we come up with the vaccines later, right? We all know that countries are scampering, you know, and scampering for vaccine. There are manufacturers who are now working 24 hours a day coming out with vaccines, and countries are trying to get supply of those vaccines from either directly from the manufacturer or through COVAX facilities. But there is this eventual challenge of making sure that vaccines will comply with these 4 indicators, right? It would have to be accessible throughout the globe. It would have to be administered without any discrimination. It would have to be affordable. And whatever data that is, coming out in terms of the effect after taking the vaccines, for example, would have to be accessible on a global basis so that scientists will be able to improve that vaccines and come up with a perfect vaccine. Now, when we talk about COVID-19, everybody focused so much on the vaccines, but actually there are a whole plethora, a whole range of medical product that is needed in this COVID-19. We need medicines, either in dosified and bulk medicines. We need medical supplies in the form of consumables. We need medical equipment and technology. We need personal protective products like hand sanitizers, face masks, protective gloves, and spectacles. We also need a lot of control medicines such as sedatives, analgesics, you know, for intubation protocols. We also need whatever is needed for pain and palliative care, surgical care, anesthetic, mental health, neurological conditions, treatment of trust disorders, and whatnot. So, you know, this whole treatment is costing a lot to the country's coffer. And of course, you know, and like I mentioned previously as well, Malaysia and Indonesia, we are not a technology producer. We don't produce drugs and medicines. We import a lot of these items. Some of, the biggest exporter of face masks is actually China. We import drugs from India. Therefore, we rely heavily on trade to get a lot of these stuffs. These are just typical daily needs that we need in this COVID-19 pandemic, not to mention vaccines once it is developed later. Right. So how does IP comes into the play? IP is very, very important in the providing the incentive and motivation for entrepreneurs to come out with the necessary drugs and essential medicines to improve the livelihood of human beings. But we know now, especially in COVID-19, governments step up on pumping money because government are desperate to get the vaccine. US and Germany have pumped so much money in developing the vaccine because everybody's waiting for the vaccine. So the whole ecosystem of IP has now changed. Previously, it's the private enterprises that spend money or invest money in coming out with the medicine. Therefore, they qualify or they deserve this patent protection to enable them to recoup back the investment that they have put in the development of the vaccine. But here the ecosystem has changed. The investment come in from the government, and with COVAX facility, for example, government come in a group, and they pay upfront, to enable this vaccine to be developed much faster and to be able to be manufactured in big doses. So some of the scientists question where they may not be a necessity for parent for the manufacturers that come up with the COVID-19. Maybe even if they can apply patents over it, then it should be given on free license to others, because the investment does not come internally anymore. It comes from national governments, and therefore the products of the researchers should be shared on a global basis to everybody. This is just an overview of the current vaccines currently in clinical trial. Now, this data is a bit outdated. It was in June. We know now that 3 of these vaccines or candidate are already in phase 3, and we know that Russia has also announced that their vaccine is ready, although quite some scientists question whether the phase 3 trial has been conducted properly. We know that in the US, the candidate vaccine will be announced soon after the presidential candidate, and everybody's eyeing to get access to those vaccines. So this is where the fever or the war, the way it depends on how you say it, to find a vaccine is so enormous and not comparable to other vaccine. Vaccine for other diseases will take 10 years or 15 years, but now everybody's rushing to get the vaccines because the whole global community is depending on it. Now, if you look at the technology producer who are involved in the production of the vaccine, is either China or US or Germany and UK. These are the big technology provider. India is developing one as well, but only for internal consumption. So I was told, or from what I read. So of course, when it comes to trade, right? Malaysia and Indonesia, we are heavily reliant on imported drugs and essential equipment needed in this fight for COVID-19. And this has cost a lot on our coffer. And this is just a table of vaccine platforms, considered for the development of vaccine against SARS-CoV-2. And we are hoping that in the future we'll be able to get a supply of this. Now, this is just newspaper cuttings or columns on the amount of investment that is put in COVID-19 vaccines. US is investing heavily. Germany is also investing heavily into it. And also UK. And we know the new currency in this pandemic is actually the vaccine. Whoever has control of the vaccine will have a control of probably the whole world. I'm so sorry if I say a bit too, strong. So we all know that developing a vaccine is a long and complex process, and it requires a number of clinical trials. There are many, many phases, right? Many, many phases. Indonesia has signed up with China. They agreed to participate in the human trial for the vaccine developed by China. Indonesia can do so because they have a large population that is suffering from COVID-19. So there's a potential pool, of people who can be the volunteers to participate in the human trial. Malaysia have not announced anything. This has built a lot of expectation. There are already local manufacturers who are ready to tie up with the international manufacturer to not only to manufacture, but also to package if the vaccine is later developed. But we have also seen at another front that this race to develop vaccine has also raised logistical issues, right? How do you deliver, supply, and administer vaccine to the whole world? Who has right to the vaccine first? Where is it going to be stored, right? And all these things would have to be set in place before, those vaccines even reach your borders. So it has also raised a lot of ethical issues and, of course, money issues, right? The most interesting thing is the ethical issues, controversy involving the vaccine candidate developed by Oxford, because it was developed from fetal cell from from elective aborted fetus, but it was aborted in 1970s, and from there it is developed into cell lines, and the manufacturer actually promised that the eventual result will not have any trace of human DNA in it. But it has raised a lot of controversy, and in Malaysia, of course, this has been discussed, right? HDC is willing to give the halal certification for COVID-19, although we have also views that say, regardless, because of darurah, because of necessity and emergency, it doesn't matter whether the vaccine is 100% halal or not, it would have to be administered. If it would have to be administered to save lives. And we all know that we apply maqasid sharia, the life of the person, override in this situation, and therefore we need to save life first. But on the ground, there is also a need to simplify process, approval for drugs, export, transportation, and supply. And most countries have already eased and liberalized a lot of rules to pave the way for the supply of essential medicines, especially for the approval of drugs and especially for exports. And you can see a number of notifications sent to WTO on this new rules or more relaxed rules on export and transportation. And as far as countries are concerned, they are strategizing which vaccines to block and to whom to supply, right? Okay. Now, under TRIPS agreement, everybody quoted Article 31 on the use of compulsory license and government use to have access to essential medicines in when there is a public health crisis and emergency. And of course, everybody quoted paragraph 6, Doha Declaration, or Article 31Bs, that enable countries to import these medicines when there is public health crisis. We all know that not all countries have the capacity to manufacture drugs at a large scale. Malaysia may have the capacity to produce certain type of drug, but not all types of drugs. We are not like India. We are not like Bangladesh that have the technical expertise to produce drugs. We know that India, for example, has produced or manufactured remdesivir, right? The generic version of remdesivir using compulsory license or even government use. There are already countries that issued compulsory license and government use on some of the essential drugs which are used in the treatment of COVID-19 now, like Kaletra and remdesivir. So these two provisions are very, very important. Malaysia have used government use once, for hepatitis B or hepatitis C, twice for HIV and hepatitis B or C. And if Malaysia were to issue next, for COVID-19, it's advisable because other countries are already doing that. Now, these are just examples of countries that have already issued compulsory license, like Canada, Germany, Ecuador, Chile. They have taken steps to make it easier, to issue compulsory license. And I want to show the latest report by WTO on TRIPS agreement, intellectual property, and how intellectual property can come in and assist in coming out with the necessary solutions, to improve our livelihood and make things easier in this COVID-19 pandemic, not only for essential medicines, but also for other things as well. Like, for example, now, there are companies who open up their technology on open access basis, so that other people can use it in this COVID-19 pandemic. These are examples of voluntary collaborative efforts. And these are examples of members which have undertaken actions relating to compulsory licenses for COVID-19 related technology. And I would implore you to read this report because it was only recently released. It is only released last week. It's dated 15 October 2020. So let's now move to market and competition. We all know that intellectual property is developed to provide the incentive and motivation for private entrepreneurs and enterprises to come out with new solutions to improve the livelihood of human beings. And the way they are motivated is by giving them this so-called exclusive rights in the form of patent. It's a limited form of exclusive rights. It's only for 20 years. And after that, it will fall into public domain. Now, however, there are many pharmaceutical companies that have used their IP rights to sort of like enhance their market power. Of course, patent per se will not give rise to market power. It has to come up with other strategies such as marketing strategies or exclusive licensing, tying up, grant back, provision, parent pooling, So there are a number of other strategies that, pharmaceutical companies have come up with to actually enhance their market power to do what? So that they'll be able to extract the premium price for their drugs in the market. This is where competition policy comes into play. Now, in Malaysia, competition law is quite recent. It's only passed in 2010. It's quite recent. And what we did was, what happened is that we come up with the national guidelines on intellectual property and competition, looking at how competition is relevant in the area of intellectual property. And this guideline was only launched 2019, early last year, right, January 2019. And if you read the national guidelines, I'm so lucky or fortunate to be involved in the drafting of the guidelines among the consultants, to be involved in the guidelines. And you find that in the guidelines, there are quite a lot of instances of abuse of competition policies in the world of intellectual property, right? Involving pharmaceutical companies, involving licensing bodies, involving trademark owners, involving franchise. And if you look at the way the national guidelines is drafted, and you can see it's quite comprehensive. It examines how a pharmaceutical company can attain a dominant position and further abuse that dominant position, by to enable them to extract premium price over their drugs. And as you can see, in the context of drugs, at times the profit that will obtain on a particular drug, maybe you would have thought it will just be 100%. It can be like 1,000%. It can be like 3,000%. It is that excessive, and we're talking about that excessive. Maybe you say it's 100% is reasonable because they have invested a lot of money in developing that drug. Maybe 200% is excessive, but when it has gone up to 3,000%, more than that, then definitely it is a bit too exorbitant. And a lot of the premium drugs are priced according to the purchasing power of the particular country, I wish, but a lot of the drugs are actually priced at the purchasing power of the developed countries, because that's where they want to get as much as their R&D back as possible. So if you look at these guidelines, it talks about price fixing, whether it's vertical or horizontal. It talks about sharing market or sources of supply. It talks about limiting or controlling production, parallel imports, and abuse of dominant position that leads to excessive pricing, post-expiration royalty, non-competition clause, product hopping, refusal to license, bundling, tying, and whatnot. And we also deal with standard essential patents. Now, it's not, I don't have the time to go through the national guidelines in depth, but because this guideline is specifically on intellectual property, you'll find that it covers all instances of possible anti-competitive conduct committed by IP owners, either in the form of horizontal or vertical agreement, anti-competitive practices, or abuse of dominant position. Now, if you look at the guidelines, it also have a specific definition of a market for intellectual property. We know that the market for intellectual property is different from other goods. So it is divided into the goods, which is the vaccine, the technology markets, and also the innovation and R&D market. And the collaboration can occur at many levels. And as you can see, the guidelines in other countries, most competition authorities have liberalize any form of collaboration among pharmaceutical companies, even if it's vertical level or horizontal level, so long as the intention is actually to ease the production of essential medicines and to ease the supply and distribution of essential medicines to the public or to the masses. So these are some of the prohibition under the Competition Act. And what would be possible abuse of powers that we're talking about? Let's look at just remdesivir. We all know that President Trump was diagnosed for COVID, and he was in the hospital for 3 days and he was already out. The same with Boris Johnson, right? They receive special treatment. They receive all the experimental drugs, right? They receive the best treatment. And I know that remdesivir has, WHO is saying that remdesivir do not necessarily have a very substantial effect for patients who are suffering from COVID-19, but it is the standard treatment in many, many hospitals. You look at the price of remdesivir, it is set at $2,340 US, for developed countries. This treatment is very, very expensive. And can you imagine our hospitals in Malaysia, because public health is subsidized by the government, treatment of COVID-19 is free in Malaysia. The amount of money that Malaysia is paying to treat patients who are suffering from COVID-19. And eventually, when we sign up, now they are thinking of signing up for COVAX, we are already putting up upfront 40 million. And later, if we want to get the vaccine accessible to just 3% of our population, is going to cost us 600 million. So later next year, when the vaccine is available, everybody will cry out loud, wanting to have access to it. And there'll be a lot of debate as to who have access to it, because it's not accessible to everybody. So this is where compulsory licensing come in. This is where Competition Commission will come in, just to control the price of essential goods during COVID-19. And also, there are also distributors who control supply so that they can increase the price. We suffered this with regard to face mask in the early days of COVID-19 in Malaysia, in March especially, where the price of face masks have gone up so high, and the price of hand sanitizers have also gone up so high. So these are essential supplies that we need. This is just as simple as face masks and hand sanitizer. So the Competition Commission will have to come in very strongly and try and open up the market, and of course go against all these abuses of competition policy, especially those who are imposing excessive pricing and trying to control supply to enable to extract a higher premium of the price. And this is just what just to end up with what Malaysia is currently doing, right? We have signed up. We are still signing up. We have not, I think, signed up the formal contract yet, but it's already been announced that we're going to sign up for COVAX. which is going to cost for 3 million doses of vaccines, which is going to cost upfront 40 million and later 600 million just to vaccinate 3% of our population, maybe not even 3%. We have also contracted bilaterally with the manufacturers with China also to have access to the vaccines that they develop. Ultimately, it's a question of dollars and cents. And what COVID-19 has forced us is to rethink of everything, rethink of intellectual property. Intellectual property essentially is to give now we have to think differently, right? Manufacturers of essential goods and medicines needed in the fight of COVID-19 would have to open up their technology to platform and made it available for the whole world. The traditional market mechanism of marketing, supplying, and distributing no longer works in lieu of urgency for access of medicine. And whatever practices, either is vaccine nationalism, parent pooling, hoarding, excessive pricing, will definitely be an affront to UN goals for right to health. And we know that in this COVID-19 pandemic, we cannot work alone and we cannot survive alone. The whole world would have to survive for us to survive. And I would like to end with this. I love this caption, kita jaga kita. Although we have to take care of ourselves, but we also have to take care of ourselves for the whole community. And we have to work as a group. You know, we have to collaborate and cooperate. And I'm insisting this more and more because we are Malaysia especially, were depending on others' technology. It's the same thing with Indonesia. I mean, Germany can be a bit relaxed, can be a bit, you know, they don't have to worry so much because they have the technology. They are developing it in house, right? So we hope that the technologically superior country, the developed country, will, you know, be merciful to humankind because it's the future of humankind and share. And we have to double our effort in cooperation and collaboration. With that, I end my presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, Prof. Thank you so much. Thank you for your nice presentation, Prof.
Let me try and
Actually,
get rid
yeah.
of,
It's okay, Prof.
how to stop share. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Okay,
Thank you.
Prof. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah, we agreed with you. Yeah. Yeah, Prof. We agreed with you that nowadays we are very crazy for the vaccine because countries are want to save their citizens. We don't want to see the people dying in front of us. So
Yes.
the developed countries like USA, Germany investing heavily for the vaccine. And when they are announcing, for example, Russia, they're announcing their vaccine is ready, so we start negotiation to get the vaccine. Yeah. So I want to make an announcement for the attendance. We have question and answer session after the lecture. So if you have any question, you can leave it in our chat box or you can keep it in your mind. We will give you time to ask the question to our speaker. Now I want to start with Professor Dr. Stefan Koos. He's from Germany, University of Bundeswehr, Munich, Germany. He is an expert of commercial law and competition law. Yes, Prof. It's your time, Prof.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Selamat pagi to Indonesia.
Morning.
Well, today I would like to speak about well, I must first of all apologize. I finished my ideas for the presentation just just yesterday night. So because I was not so sure what to make specific about the topic. Yeah. So originally I was planning to give a sort of a introduction to the dominant market position and some cases, important cases, but I wanted to focus it more on our topic, post-pandemic times. And this is it's quite innovative for our seminar because normally all these webinars are about pandemic era. And now we make something post-pandemic era, and this is a challenge. This is very, very good. So want to talk about some aspects, just some aspects. It's not yet very well structured. So some aspects about what teachings can we take from the pandemic. And some of these aspects, my colleague Prof. Ida already mentioned. She's a specialist in this, especially in this relation between intellectual property and markets. Maybe we focus on three main aspects. One aspect is, of course, the abuse of dominant market position by online trading platforms, which is a specific issue, or was a specific issue in Germany. And we all know that United States and European Union are investigating against the big trading platforms because of that. So not so much on the on the relation between intellectual property and market, but I will mention also some aspect on that, just to inform you about the situation in Germany, which is a little bit more favorable for the situation now, belonging to the pharmaceutical industry and the IP and the prices of pharmaceutical products in the German market. The second main important aspect for me is actually this is a project I joined research project with my colleague Professor Bohne from Dortmund. What teaching we take from the pandemic era for the data protection and for new forms of labor and teaching, especially relating to the data protection and the use of certain disruptive new technologies, AI and webinars, software, and also the international aspect of transferring personal data to abroad. This is a really, really important problem, and it's also a practically important problem as we see in our own experience here in our universities. And the third point, this is actually what Prof. Ida already mentioned and already talked of protection of intellectual property and global interest. I will just mention some short ideas about that. And I'm sorry, this is a little bit a repeating of what I did in one of our last seminars when we talk about the end of globalization. I just want to remind you on this aspect. Now let's maybe first start with the maybe most unique aspect. Let me make the presentation in a correct way, like this. So about the data protection issue. To start with the thesis, to start with the postulate, we want to say that the recent concept of data protection, especially in the relation to new technologies like ubiquity, online services, and artificial intelligence, is an anachronism. This is very provocative, I know that, but it is an anachronism, and we get this teaching from the pandemic era. Let me make it clearer. What is the problem actually in the data protection nowadays? The problem in the data protection nowadays is the processing of big amounts of personal data from data mining companies, social media, Internet of Things, online marketing platforms. We will talk about that when we talk about the market share and the market dominance of Amazon or Alibaba in markets, especially for the discrimination of consumer supplies and algorithmic pricing. This is one aspect where we see that the data protection seems to need more restrictiveness to protect consumers, to protect the users against the misuse of their data in this. And this is more intensive nowadays through the pandemic era, because in the pandemic era, the people are avoiding the shops and avoiding the malls and buy even more in online system and use more online systems like online buying platforms, communication platforms, and so on and so on. Second, the deep learning system in human resources systems, AI in human resource systems must learn. For example, if you have a company, the company want to rationalize their human resources procedures, so they use AI systems, and these AI systems, of course, must be fed with the data of the labor and of the workers and of the employees. But this is very simple thought, that the AI system is there and we just give the data in and then the AI system works. AI system must learn. And for learning, they need training data. And these training data will, of course, come from the company. So you have a big company and there are a lot of employees maybe have nothing to do with what this AI system should do, but the company must feed the system with data and then maybe use the data of employees. And if we see the problem, what is the problem here? Anyone has personal data. Of course, an employee could say, I don't want that my data are used for a training AI system. I will clarify later why this is the point. And third, very important for the teaching in universities, maybe not so much discussed in Indonesia and in Malaysia, but hardly discussed in Germany, the transfer of personal data to abroad via webinar and conferencing software. This seems to be a very unique and single problem, but this is actually a basic problem for us, because in the moment, the whole teaching and scientific world is using webinar software from certain countries, developed from certain countries, using servers in certain countries. And we can hardly not avoid to transfer IP data of login, speech, language, photos, movies, to transfer this data. And we are, my university is a military, scientific military university. We have army officers from up of lieutenant studying until master and doctorate. And of course, the Ministry of Defense sees our university as a department of the Ministry of Defense. And so we participate in the security needs of the Ministry of Defense and of the Army, which leads to the horrible situation that basically are not allowed to use Zoom for official purpose. I cannot even make meetings with my students with Zoom. I cannot share any information which could be classified as secret, because, and I can of course not teach my students, even less than already we have the problem in normal universities, civil universities of the German states, because we teach in a majority 80% soldiers. And then the IP addresses of these soldiers are transferred to US servers. In these US servers, they can identify anyone with the IP address, basically, theoretically. And this is a big problem for us. So we are not allowed officially to use Zoom for our teaching. We must use certain substitute products like Big Blue Button or Jitsi Meet, which are browser-based, which are using servers in Germany. And why is that? This is the reason for that is the data protection regulation, which has certain basic rules, which are of course also in the recent data protection regulation of the EU, just new regulated, such as sparing data. The sparing data principle means we should not store and process more data than we need for a certain defined and identified purpose, which must be transparent to the person, the data of which we use. So in German, we would say Datasparsamkeit. Second, there is the idea that data of individuals in the European Union cannot be transferred to countries, to servers in countries which are not safe harbor, which is of course a main problem, because Many of these data are used by companies which are American companies. So, of course, for pragmatical reason, the European Union always tries to define in a pragmatic way the US as a safe harbor, so we can transfer data to the US because, of course, US is ally and so on and so on. But the second time now, as I know, the second time, the European High Court of Justice canceled this safe harbor decision and decided that the United States is in fact not a safe harbor. So it is not allowed to transfer data of individuals from European Union to United States servers unless these individuals agree with that. And this is, of course, now a crucial problem in the pandemic because we use all these systems much more, and we develop new solutions for our teaching, which we maybe will use in the post-pandemic time. Still, we will not stop using it. For my part, I will develop a teaching concept which clearly will use this online system and these blended learning systems even after the pandemic. And we see that the home office is working quite good. We have new studies which say that the workers, the employees are in fact not that less productive with the home working and the home office. We see that companies decide to spare budget, not sending at least the middle level management abroad around the world with the aircraft, but making online video conferencing and so on. So we have all these aspects in the post-pandemic time, and we see now in the pandemic time that we have a seizing or infringement of the idea of innovation and encouraging innovation by the individuals who use this and to work with that due to the data protection regulation. I give you an example. In the beginning of the pandemic, many school teachers had to develop their teaching to the students who could not go to the school alone without any support and any help of the ministry or of any authorities or whatever. They did it alone. They downloaded the software, they found out how to use it, they organized the lecture, the online lecture, and gave online lecturing. Some months later, the data protection authorities of the states, which is a part of the federalistic system, in certain states threatened these teachers with high fines because these teachers did not take into account the data protection interest of the students. Because using Zoom, and Zoom is not safe. Zoom is transferring data to foreign servers. Now, what happens for the future? No teacher ever will dare to use Zoom for that, but as there is not really a substitute available, we will have a stop of an effective teaching. And the same happened to my faculty. I made a letter to all the professors and all to the whole university that I, for example, will not teach unless I can use Zoom, because I cannot make a recording which I can later cut and edit with big blue button. Big blue button is often breaking together if you lose Wi-Fi. If you have too many participants, more than 20 participants can be already a problem. So it is highly discouraging us to teach. And so actually I use my Zoom account here illegal with you. Yeah, this is a fact. So the president of the university gave us a waiver now, exceptional waiver now, because she herself had to understand that the teaching is not possible. So what we should learn about that? We should learn of that the contemporary data protection law as a restrictive system, to be restrictive against infringement, and infringements are already given if you collect data without a clear defined purpose, if one single person is contradicting in a whole system. Let's say I give a lecture and I tell the students, here we have a Zoom application. The Zoom application will transfer your speech and your voice and your IP data to United States. And one student can say, no, I not agree. Then practically I must stop to use this application. This means I must stop the lecture. Or I must tell the student, yeah, then you can see the recording, but this is maybe not the same chance for the student because the student has the right to follow my lecture. So one person, one individual can stop the whole system. What is the problem here? The problem is here that we have in the moment an emergency situation. You mentioned that, Prof. Ida, already.
Yes.
We have an emergency situation. We have to be pragmatic. We have a situation in the world in the moment. I would, with my 54 years, never imagine that I come into this science fiction situation we actually have now. Yeah, this is incredible, an incredible challenge for all of us. And for the post-pandemic time, we cannot go back to back as business as usual. So our idea is the data protection regulation and these basic principles of data sparing and of non-transferring data is maybe not following the technical development as we see it in the moment, and the replacement of certain traditional media or solutions by disruptive technologies. With other words, if we use internet, we will have always a certain danger to transfer data to abroad because we have always routing. We have always transferring data to some servers everywhere or routing through. And we cannot say that we in Europe are an island of happiness just to close us out and to say we are Europe. And in Europe, we protect this in this absolute way. And then we don't share we have not a connection to the technical development in the world. I give you another example for the paradoxy we have here. We have a relatively new regulation on free flow of data, which says that non-personal data can free flow throughout the European Union. This means no country, no member state of the European Union can forbid that technical data taken by Internet of Things, for example, which are non-personal, go to another European member state. The idea behind that was we have the new trend of the Internet of Things, let's say virtual glasses, smart watches, and so on, collecting all the time data. And if we forbid to transfer data to abroad, or a member state can take a limit, give a limit to transfer this data to another member state, then Internet of Things would not be practically possible. So we need free flow of data. The problem is no one can define where is really the limitation between personal data and non-personal data. This means we have a totally unclear situation, and we can see that most data an Internet of Things device like a smartwatch or a smart glasses is taken is potentially personal, because you can always combine these data, or mostly combine this data, with a device, and the device has a number, an IP number if it's internet. So it is mostly everything personal data. So the idea in the prefix of this regulation was to encourage the development of Internet of Things and encourage the economy to use Internet of Things. But as we know, most of these Internet of Things coming from United States or from Asia, the server are not in the European Union. So this is already a point. We cannot encourage Internet of Things if we only have free flow of data within the European Union. This is a paradox situation. So we see here the good idea of protecting the individual against misuse of data. It is still a good idea, but it is not realistic. And if we have a legal situation which is not practically to enforce, we cannot enforce it in a practical way, and the users cannot follow these regulations. This is the same situation like if you have some injury in your foot and you cannot step with the full foot, then you will step in the wrong way, and then you will have another issue in your leg. Let me give this anthropomorphic picture. The same happened with a legislative situation, which is practically not enforceable. If you have a legislative situation which is practically not enforceable, I want to say, for example, we cannot make sparing data. We cannot be fully transparent to any user, because otherwise we will not be able to use human research systems, AI systems which learn. Unless we do that, we cannot use webinar software in the post-pandemic time and in the pandemic time, and so on and so on. This leads to the trend and the tendency that the users will use or substitute solutions which are maybe out of the data protection regulation, or even infringe the data protection regulation in a hidden way, which cannot be in the interest of the legislator. So what is the solution for that, for the post-pandemic time? What do we learn for the post-pandemic time? We think that we should be more pragmatic and understand that some of these basic rules of the classic data protection law coming from times in which we had a different technology. On the other side, we cannot just give up the protection of the individual, which is a need coming from the constitutional situation and from the human rights situation. So the idea is very short, and I cannot go into the deep anymore to that. The idea is very short. Instead of having a too restrictive system, we need a new concept of protecting the individual in a more flexible way. For example, by understanding the personal data as intellectual property, using certain licensing systems, giving the data individual more sovereignty over the data, sovereignty in a way, for example, in an opt-out way instead of opt-in way. In the moment we have actually an opt-in system, that the individual must opt-in in a clear way before you use something. But in the future, maybe it should be more reasonable to give an opt-out, so the individual can opt out in a certain situation. But if there is no statement, then we can use it. This is all not yet elaborated, but in my opinion, this restrictive system cannot be held on. We have to have a shift from data restriction to data sovereignty of the individual. And this is one of the main teachings for me from the pandemic, because now in the pandemic, we have let's say we have an experimental situation. We use all this now in a way we would maybe used otherwise within 5 years. Maybe I would never develop all these blended learning teachings and webinar softwares. I would never do it, but now I have to do it. And we learn from that, and we see what are the problems. And if we want to go on with that, and maybe we will never have a vaccination, who knows that? Maybe it will take very long until we have a vaccine. Maybe people will not accept the vaccine. Maybe vaccine has risk. We don't know that. Maybe we have to live for years with that. Yeah, we need more pragmatic solutions for that. This is one of the aspects. The second aspect, and in the end, I will summarize that to one rule I want to develop out of all this, is the antitrust law and the abuse of dominant market position. I want to give you an example from the struggle between the European Commission and Amazon, and also in the US, there is this discussion about limiting the market power of the FAA. FAAG companies, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, and Google. Amazon in the pandemic was very important for the support of the people. I would say it was system relevant, even if it was not mentioned system relevant by the authorities. For us, it was system relevant. I ordered practically everything, even food, certain food in Amazon, due to a shortage of certain products in the shops. So what is Amazon? In Asia, Amazon is not so important like Alibaba. In Germany, Amazon is first of all developed from a bookseller to a very diversified selling platform for practically every product. They have now clouds. They start now with Teladoc services in the United States for their employees, and I'm sure they will use it also for the public later. They start to be an online pharmacy and so on and so on. But Amazon has also a market, which is the market of the marketplaces. So Amazon is not only a seller for products, Amazon is also a platform for other sellers to use this platform to sell their products, especially small and middle size sellers and also producers. So they use the Amazon marketplace system in concurrence, very paradox, to Amazon itself, and in concurrence to daughter companies of Amazon, like resellers of pre-owned products. In Europe, we have the special situation that any consumer can send back any product within 2 weeks without any reason, which leads to a big market for refurbished products, because all these products are practically new and must be coming to the market. So Amazon is also selling these products on their marketplace. They sell own brands. They sell products of other brands also, not only by other sellers, also Amazon itself does it. So they are practically very strong in the marketplace market. And I would say in this market, they are rather a dominant company. So what is the issue with that? Amazon has a big data stock of customers, and it has very strong and very powerful algorithms, which can place own brands very effective within the marketplace. So the Amazon has a market observation algorithm, which sees which brands are very successful, which sees which products are very successful of other companies and other sellers, but also the brands they use in their own market. And so they can use this data stock and this algorithm data by placing their own products, also their own brand. What the European Commission is accusing Amazon for is to have sold already copies of bestseller products offered by other sellers in the marketplace of Amazon. Because of this observation, they knew which product is successful in the market, and so they copied the product, of course, within the rules of the intellectual property. Amazon is not infringing openly the intellectual property, different to other sellers maybe in the marketplace, but Amazon has quite effective observation system of this, but always in the edge of infringing the intellectual property, they are accused to have blocked certain sellers on its marketplace without warning whenever the seller was getting into a danger for Amazon. And very important, in the pandemic time, this fired up the discussion about the market dominance and the abuse of market dominance of Amazon. They prioritized certain products which they said are necessary in pandemic time for the supply of the people of the daily need, before luxury products for the shipping in the beginning of the pandemic, especially. So, for example, if you bought a lipstick, you would not get it after 3 weeks, before 3 weeks. But if you ordered, let's say, masks, if they were available in the beginning, they were not available, you got it at once. The problem is, the idea practically is a good idea, right? It shows responsibility. Amazon want to help in the pandemic. Amazon want to help the people in the pandemic. The problem is that this choice, which is prioritizing and which is not prior, was very untransparent. And there seemed to be the assumption that Amazon was choosing own products to be prior before products in the marketplace or products of concurrent companies, and the choice which products are important were not really correct. So this is what the European Commission blamed Amazon for. And there is an investigation against Amazon about this. And this will be very interesting because we have now a totally new structure of the business with the online selling. The online selling platforms show us a totally new situation. It shows us a situation in which we have a mix-up of markets, but we have a mix-up of interest. Normally, there is a marketplace owner, and the marketplace owner allows sellers to use the marketplace. Of course, the marketplace owner must keep the marketplace open in a fair way, and the choice must be clear which seller is allowed. But Amazon is actually the seller who gives the other sellers, the concurrent, the marketplace for selling the product. This gives Amazon a lot of power to stop the other sellers from selling the product. So this is a mix-up of interest. And I can imagine that this will be the crucial point in the investigation against Amazon by the European Commission, that they have to separate the service of marketplace to other sellers from their own interest to sell products in their marketplace. So Amazon cannot be a seller and a marketplace service supplier at the same time. I await that Amazon will be fined with a very high amount. If we compare the case Commission versus Google, where it is dealing with Google Shopping, Google AdSense, and Android, and also certain issues which are very similar. Google makes own advertising and use the Google searching machine for advertising of others, and then prioritize advertising of certain companies which pay for that. Then we had fines so far over 8 billion euro. So you can see this is a very high threat for these companies. And just mention it as a side aspect. I hear these days that Facebook is discussing to draw back from the European market because they are worried that they cannot fulfill the data protection regulation needs and European competition law needs as the extraterritorial aspect of the European data protection regulation, the extraterritorial aspect of the European competition law is crucial for these United States companies. So United States companies are not able to fulfill that and maybe will leave the European market. I don't know if this is marketing that they want to threaten the European Commission that there will be a shock for the consumers. But if we see in, and I don't know how it is practically possible, but we can see, we can observe that that the European data protection regulation was influencing the international data protection law because international companies, even United States companies, which are very powerful and actually independent of the European Union authorities, fulfill the needs or try to fulfill the needs of the data protection regulation. Whether that is good or not, I don't know. Mr. Bohne said, I don't know. Is it good? He's a data protection expert. He is more on the liberal side. Let it free, let it flow. I'm more on the restrictive side, but I tend more and more to say maybe we need it more liberal to be realistic. So actually, I prepared this as as an information for our students, but I will not bore you with that basics of the antitrust law. Just very short, because I found it very interesting. I give a similar presentation in Indonesia. And if we compare the Article 102 of the TFEU with the Indonesian Article 25 of the law number, 5/1999, I think, then we see that there are certain differences in the regulation technique. If we compare Article 102 TFEU about abuse of dominant market position with the Malaysian legal situation, then we see that the Malaysian legal situation is very close with the European legal situation. So the regulation technique is very similar, and also the ideas and the rules of the Malaysian competition organization or authority, how to investigate this and which are the factors of dominance and of abuse of dominance are very similar to the Commission. Including very important, including important the Article 3, the waiver for certain economic rules, economic reasons that the rule of the abuse of dominant position should not limit companies from actions which are effective for the consumers. Even this is very similar. I was very surprised about that. So very short, for the students under us, of course my colleagues know this, the examination setup is very clear. We discuss first the scope of the rule of the then we must define the dominant position. And also here the Malaysian practice and the European practice is really similar. This is not in all countries the same, but both use for the market definition the substitution concept, which in the relevant product market, which products are substitutable from the point of view of the market contrapoint of the consumer in case of the addressing the consumer, and the relevant geographic market. This is all very similar, and we see more and more that we have also a world market. So basically the Malaysian antitrust law could be also extraterritorial, but as I already mentioned in the lecture before, some weeks before, this is also a question of market of the political power of the authority of this state, and the market dominance, which is also very similar to the European Union concept, and very interesting is also that the market share of a company in the market is not the only point of defining the market dominance. In other antitrust legal systems, often the market share is very focusing on the market share, but in the European Union and in the Malaysian antitrust law, the market share is one of several aspects for defining the market dominance. And then we have the abusive conduct.
Sorry, Prof, I forgot to mention your time. If you don't mind, you have maximum 10 minutes, Prof.
How long I have still?
10 minutes, Prof. 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Yeah, this is enough for me.
Yes.
So if we go to the Amazon case, if we go back to the Amazon case, in my opinion, if we define the market share of Amazon, we see here very clear that the market share is not so high as you could await. This is just the numbers of Germany. I don't know the numbers in whole Europe, but in the numbers of Germany, you see, and this will not be very different from Europe, 24% is the highest market share, and this is in electronic and computer. So if we only look the market of the products they sell, then the market share is not so big. Nevertheless, if we talk about what the Commission is investigating now, is the market of marketplace, and the market of marketplace may be higher. But this is not enough, because if you see the combination between market share, between product selling, between the use of a very strong algorithm and popularity and the collection of data of the users, then we see in this combination, even with a market share of 24%, it is not necessarily like this that Amazon is not in a dominant position. So I'm very positive for that the Commission will find that Amazon, at least in the market of marketplace, is in a dominant position. And in my opinion, one of the teaching for the antitrust law in this is that we must regulate and limit the power of these platforms more, because these platforms gained a lot of power in the market through the pandemic, and for the post-pandemic time, this must be, let's say, deregulated in a certain way. Whether these companies must be forced to sell parts of the concern, or whether they must make some aspects to make it more transparent. This is a further question. But if we see what happens to Microsoft, then we see that Microsoft also was forced to loosen this combination between the Explorer and the Windows platform, and so on and so on. And it was very expensive for Microsoft, and it also Microsoft was forced to do so. The last aspect I want to just very short mention, because you mentioned that, Prof. Ida, I want to inform you about this pharmaceutical aspect in Germany. In Germany, we have since 2011, we have a law about the regulation of the pharmaceutical prices. And this will also apply, of course, for the COVID-19 medicaments and for vaccinations. We have actually a regulated market price of pharmaceutical products. This is quite complicated, just very simple. With simple spoken and make it a little bit more simpler than it is actually. The Krankenkassen, which is we have a social health system with a very strong public insurances which pay prices for these products, and these public insurances are obligatory for everyone who has a salary which is under a certain limit. So they're very powerful, and the companies, if they want to apply a new price and a higher price to a new product, let's say innovation in the COVID-19, they have to show that this medicament has an additional need for the health of the public. So if there is an additional need, which is decided in a certain commission, which decide about the medical need and the medical surplus value of this medicament, if there is a plus value, then they can add a certain price to this product, which is not the same price like products before, and they can add a more higher price, which must be reasonable, and will be also discussed in contracts between these public insurance system and the pharmaceutical companies. So you see, we have here, let's say, we have a regulation of the market and a limit of market power of the pharmaceutical companies by, let's say, a treaty, a contract system between the public insurances and the pharmaceutical products, which force the pharmaceutical products to keep reasonable prices. Of course, this is not always difficult to understand when there is a surplus and when it is reasonable to give a higher price to a product and to allow a higher price in the market. And of course, there is a lobby aspect. Yeah, we don't know how strong is the lobby aspect in these commissions, which have to decide about that. But this is another point. And very short, in the end, I would like to mention this aspect of my lecture about end of globalization, because it also belongs to what you said, Prof. Ida. In my opinion, a part of the details we must find to a more global social understanding of the economic and the world economic system, more global social understanding also of the intellectual property rights. And I totally agree with a liberal waiver system, which allows companies to give licenses, to give forced licenses to pharmaceutical companies or companies which meet the needs of the global population and of the population of a country. But of course, same like in the data protection regulation, of course we need still the wish of the companies to develop something new. We cannot stop this wish by socializing everything. So we must replace this opening for the market for certain products by a stronger price or stronger salary in another way for these companies. How this is equilibrated is not so clear, but in my opinion, this social economic global social responsibility aspect should be also integrated into the WTO waiver system, into the WTO system on intellectual property rights in the TRIPS, and in the discussion should be stronger in the discussion. Yeah, this is my presentation. I'm sorry. I think I filled my time now. So maybe we have more for the discussion later. So I'm sorry that I could not give you clear solutions. This is all very new for us, and especially this social responsibility, or global social responsibility aspect. It can be that this is a purely theoretical approach, and it can be that will be never fulfilled. It can be that it is a good dream. Yeah. So you know also that I'm very skeptical about this global responsibility aspect and the freedom of the world and the freedom of the economy. I'm very skeptical, especially in the time when we have more and stronger egoism in the pandemic time and of the learning of the pandemic time, because the companies will surely not, the states will surely not allow in the future that one country is producing all the important products only for only there, and we cannot even produce masks in Germany because all masks come from China. We will maybe not allow this anymore, and then we will maybe see why we should share. Yeah, so this is maybe yeah, science fiction. Yeah, but at least this data protection aspect can be discussed in a very pragmatic way, and I think this is practically possible to define new rules for the data protection. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you so much. Actually, data protection is also one of the most important issues during this pandemic. Prof. Koos highlights this issue very nicely. In Malaysia, we are also using the Amazon, Alibaba, and here the popular online platform, local online platform is Lazada. By using Lazada, we are purchasing all the materials, including the groceries, laptop, etc., etc. So thank you, Prof. Thank you again for your nice and informative presentation. Now we want to open for question and answer. A few of our participants, they want to ask some question. I think someone from Indonesia, Surya Nita, she want to ask about taxation and etc. etc. Yeah, please, you can ask your question.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. MD Zahidul Islam from IIUM. Mr. Stephen Koos, I asked about regulation, tax regulation, e-commerce. Please, about we Indonesia, Malaysia, or another Asian make tax regulation for marketplace. Please give me information about that. Thank you, Mr.
Tax regulation. Tax regulation.
Tax regulation for Asian country, maybe. Yeah. For
well, I must admit that I'm not a tax expert and I'm not a tax law expert. What I know is that we have the issue that most of these platform companies are based in United States, and in the best case in European countries which are very liberal in the tax legislation, like Ireland, for example. Apple is based in Ireland for the, as I know, for the European activities. And the issue is that in the moment there is no, as I know, yeah, please don't take me too literally, because I'm not in this topic. But as I know, there is not a united European regulation on this tax issue. This means the discussion is that the income of these companies is taxed in United States, as certain liberal countries allow this in their regulation, that the definition where the income is raised is not in Europe, is not in Ireland, is not in Germany, it is in the United States. This means the European Union is not really participating in the income success of these United States companies, even if we can say these companies are very active in Europe. Yeah, this is the price for the ubiquity that we are everywhere and nowhere. Yeah. But basically they are based in United States, and but maybe you also heard that France is making a new tax regulation, try to tax especially these companies in France, which leads to a big anger of Mr. Trump, which anyway is very interesting that Trump always citate the deficit, the trade deficit between European Union and United States, saying that the United States is has a deficit to European Union. European Union is very unfair because we export more to United States than the United States export to us. But why is that like this? Because United States is a service economy, giving all the production more or less to Asia, and but what they export is exactly these online services, yeah. And these online services have a high volume, but if you don't count it as a product exported, but keep it as a product in United States, then of course you have a deficit. But this is of course not fair, yeah. So the same issue is here. More I cannot say about the plans how to regulate it in Germany, and I can say less about the situation in Asia because really I'm not an expert on tax law.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Stephen Koos. Your answer.
Okay, thank you, Surya, Nita. Thank you for your question. Anyone want to ask any question? Please, you can
Yes.
ask directly. Yeah.
From Palembang.
Okay, can you just tell us your name, please, first?
My name is Fatria Cairo from
Yes.
Stipada Palembang, Sumpah Pemuda School of Law. I would like to ask to Mrs. Prof. Ida from IIUM. Hello, Prof. Ida. Okay. So, okay.
Okay, yeah, what's the question?
Okay.
Yes.
Regarding to your explanation about the COVID-19, so what do you think about? So I'm so interested about the vaccine COVID-19 in Indonesia. We have the government have regulation that the society to as a participant to use a first trial of the vaccine of COVID-19. But what do you think if the society don't want to participate to use the first time to try the vaccination, and the government use a sanction for this? So does this including like as abuse of power from the government? So what do you think about that?
Thank you very much. I just want to allocate a bit of time with the first question on tax on e-commerce, because that question is a very controversial question. And a lot of developed countries actually try to enforce moratorium on any amount of tax on e-commerce for a long time. And there are quite a number of free trade agreements that have been signed, basically having provisions on not allowing countries to impose tax on e-commerce. Of course, the manufacturers would have to pay for the goods that they have produced, but the tax over the e-commerce itself. Now, Indonesia is a very interesting situation. Indonesia and Bangladesh, these are two countries that have participated in human trials. And human trials of COVID-19 is very, very controversial issue, because you are actually subjecting healthy person or individuals to COVID, to the vaccine, and then you expose them to COVID-19. These individuals are healthy in the first place, and then they are, exposed to COVID-19 to see whether the vaccine actually protects them, give them enough immunity against COVID-19. Now, many scientists were questioning whether, subjecting healthy individuals to such experiment is ethically right or not, because the effect of COVID-19 can have a permanent effect on the health of a person. You may recover from COVID-19, and we know that there are long-lasting effects of COVID-19. The virus stay in your lung, and there are many permanent disabilities that you might suffer, from being exposed to COVID-19. Regardless, nevertheless, this is something that is necessary, and especially in phase 3 trial, where they require 10,000 people, 10,000 patients or individuals to be experimented upon, to be the subject of the experiment. So they need numbers, huge numbers, to be involved in the experiment. That's why countries like Indonesia and Bangladesh are, ideal, for human trials. So I have not much to say with regards to your country forcing you to be involved in human trial. Your country may have public interest to seeing that the vaccine is being developed quickly, but there must also be some kind of contractual agreement between your country and the manufacturer of the vaccine. Normally, when they allow their population or their citizen to be involved in clinical trial, there must be some special arrangement in terms of the licensing, license fees that is imposed on the country eventually if the vaccine is ready for manufacture and production. That's why countries readily offer themselves to be involved in clinical trial, because they want this to have this special concession. Eventually, you may be able to get the vaccine at a cheaper rate, and you may be able to get large doses of the vaccines, because that there's no single manufacturer that can produce vaccine for the whole world, right? So you must be quick in trying to get the supply, and you want to get supply at a cheaper rate. Now, of course, there are certain compromises that you have to make, and I'm sure that is one of the risks that your country has sort of considered when they participated in this human trial. I hope I have answered your question.
Thank you very much. So,
Thank you.
may I have a question to Prof. Stefan Koos, moderator?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, Mr. Stefan Koos.
Hello.
Okay. I'm so interesting about your explanation. I am underline about paradox situation. Okay. In this pandemic area, we always, especially in Indonesia, we always Zoom as a media for connecting to other people, such as we as a teacher to our students, we always use Zoom in our activity. So I'm so interested about paradox situation in pandemic area. So we have to use Zoom, but on the other side, we scare about our protection data that you play explanation about that. So what the regulation in Germany about protection personal data? So Indonesia in 2020 in December for this December, maybe we because in the pandemic area we use e-voting to general election. So what the regulation in German about the protection personal data? Maybe we can compare Indonesia.
Well, this is not a German regulation. It's a European regulation, which is pan-Europe for the EU. It's a data protection regulation. And as I said, the data protection regulation forbids, first of all, storing and processing data if you have not a clearly defined purpose for this. For example, if I use your data, if I store your data in my system, in my computer, or let my system process your data, I must tell you for what I use this, and I can only store the data as long as I use it. This is already a problem for academies. For example, I'm in a private academy in a board, and we have data of students, of former students. Once the students stopped, actually you must delete the data at once. Yeah, but if they come some years later and they want to have a record of their studies, we cannot give that anymore, because actually we must delete it. Yeah. So because the purpose of participating in the lectures and making a bachelor or whatever, this is over. So this is one of the most important aspects. We must spare data. A company or an organization should not take more data than absolutely necessary for certain defined purpose. This purpose must be defined before. And you'll see this is not very flexible. And the second most important aspect of the data protection regulation is, as I mentioned, the transfer of data out of the European Union, which is only allowed to certain safe countries, which are very few safe countries out of the European Union. I think Norway is one, and maybe Singapore. I don't know. I mean that Singapore also was quite safe for that, but United States is not. Yeah, as the safe harbor decision safe harbor agreement with the United States is annulled by the European High Court. So you see that, yeah, we cannot use Zoom because Zoom has servers in US. So this is the regulation, and this regulation is very strict, and actually it is anti-innovative, yeah, because it avoids innovation, technical innovation, and procedural innovation. Procedural innovation in the lectures, yeah. Of course, some say this is good that it avoids this innovation in lecturing, giving webinars, and so on. I even read some article which says that this online teaching is highly anti-democratic and leads to a technical dictator. Yeah, but in my opinion, this is not realistic. Yeah, we will have to use this, but basically we cannot use it. Yeah, so we cannot use Zoom. But I know that in other countries you are very pragmatic. If I'm very long in Indonesia. I'm very long working in Indonesia with universities, and I know Indonesia quite good, as my family is half Indonesian. But and I must tell you that Indonesia has strong regulations which are very similar to European Union regulations very often, but the enforcement of the law in Indonesia is very pragmatic, say like this, yeah, often not effective, or in better say, euphemistic said, pragmatic. So of course no one is really interested in this, whether there is forbidden to transfer data to US or not. We use Zoom. no one thinks about that, right? Is it true or not? Yeah, consumer
Yes,
protection.
in Indonesia we always use Zoom.
Yeah, and consumer protection is the same. Yeah, you have very strict consumer protection rules, but come on, how is the consumer protection in Indonesia? You say it yourself. It's not very effective, right? Because the law enforcement is not there, and the authorities are not there for this, for controlling this. In the antitrust law, it's a little bit different. The antitrust law is not so bad enforced. But anyway, this is the situation compared to Europe. And in my opinion, we need in this maybe more pragmatism. But on the other side, as a German law expert, I'm also very formalistic. And I say, if we are pragmatic here, then we must be pragmatic in other ways too. And then all our law is not consistent anymore. So I prefer that we define clear rules which give waivers to certain aspects, rather than having rules which are strict, but we can anyway not fulfill it, and then are too pragmatic, because this is destroying a consistent law system. Thank you.
Yes, Prof. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much.
We are already at the end of our time, but we will take last question from Indonesia also. Frankie Aryadi. Frankie Aryadi. Yeah. Do you hear me?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Hello?
Can you ask your question, please?
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I wanted to ask with Mr. Professor Stefan Cross. Hello, Professor.
Okay.
Hello.
I wanted to ask about when the pandemic ends. When the pandemic ends, many countries will try to promote their trade. Finally, product, service, and others are abundant. On the other hand, consumer benefit from getting a cheap price. On the other hand, producers will experience loss because they have to reduce the level of profit. Is it like when there was a football match, when the audience in front of us stands, then finally the audience behind will be stand up too, and so on. Finally, in the end of country will be practice dumping. What do you think?
Can you repeat it very short? I did not really get the point. Did you write the answer, the question already in the chat?
Yeah.
I think he wrote it,
Mr.
Prof.
Frankie Aryadi?
Yeah, Prof.
Oh, yeah, I see. You want to know about the price development after the pandemic due to the overproduction, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Many country will be competition. Yeah, competition. They promote their product, service, and the others.
Yeah. This is this is not really possible to regulate that, in my opinion, in the antitrust law. This is a question of the calculation of the producers, right? I mean, the producers have a big chance, and they took the chance, especially in the beginning, to sell these products in abundant pricing. So you know, masks, 10 normal masks were in Germany until more than 200 euro in the beginning, and of course this is not fair. But still, we pay for 20 masks. I pay around €1.50 to €3 for the FFP2 mask, and this is of course a chance. But if a company is not calculating the chance against the risk that they overproduce and they overstress the chances of the market, then this is a normal economical calculation of a company, and a good company should calculate it in a wise way. We cannot protect companies from this. Of course, it is a different situation if the government encourage companies to produce this and or even to force companies to produce it in a big way. Then it's the responsibility of the government, and then it needs a regulation to this. But if it's a free market and the companies say there is a need, we fulfill the need. There's pandemic, and then the pandemic is sooner over than awaited, and then they produce too much. This is the business risk of every market participant. So this is actually not a question for the law. We cannot regulate that. We cannot protect the companies for that. Of course, you can ask about is the company now in a position that it is that they are in Havari, and is this company important for the social structure in the country? And you can support them like we do it in the pandemic with companies who cannot fulfill their products, cannot sell their products, and restaurants and smaller companies with that support. But this is a political question, not a legal question.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you so much.
If I may
we have
add,
few questions,
if I may add,
Prof.
Yeah,
Prof.
this is
Prof.
this is where free trade agreements will be important, right? I suspect post-pandemic countries will then renegotiate or go back, to the original trade agreement obligations under the free trade agreements that most countries are member to. Then everybody would have to start to rethink, in relation to supply, import, and export of goods in the global market.
Okay, Prof. Thank you so much, Prof. We have few questions, but we don't have any time already. We are out of time. So finally, I would like to thanks to all of you for your attendance. I want to go back to our host. I think he will say something. Okay, so Dr. Sonia, I think you are here. Dr. Sonia, do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Okay.
Okay.
Unfortunately, though we see some hands raised and questions being posed, and some people looks like they still want to ask, but well, it is good sign for us, which means that the forum somehow triggers discussions. But unfortunately, we don't have enough time for that.
We should definitely go on with that lecture series.
Yes, great, Prof. Thank you. So basically, that is for today. I apologize for all of you, those who do not have a chance to post their questions, but we are happy that you are here. And if you really wish to connect with our speakers, you can get back to us, and we would like to happily connect you with our speakers. I believe Prof. Ida Madieha and Prof. Stefan Koos would be happy to connect with anyone over here. Then we have further discussions among you all. Then I'd like to thank everyone who have been here, especially the two speakers. In fact, you have been there from the day one, Professor Koos, Professor Ida, and then we actually have Professor Michael Bonen. And he said to me that I will be on and off. He's another part of Germany. He's in Dortmund. Now I realized Dortmund and Munich, for one reason, they are actually rival, especially on football field. But it is good that we have Prof. Stefan and Prof. Bone actually very good partners with us, with AIKOL, IIUM. And that is a good thing. So we
Thank you
really
very much.
appreciate. We really appreciate, and
We
for
also,
everyone's information, that this is series number 4. We have this webinar on war and commerce, yeah, with the same partners. So I really think that this should move on. Yeah, I think Prof. Stefan, this should move on further and to have more program in future. We, in fact, on behalf of Ahmad Ibrahim Kuliah of Law, especially for the head as a head of internationalization and global network, we are opening up all the opportunities and all opportunities for us to connect with all everyone, yeah, institutions as well as individuals, and to have more, I mean, collaborations in future. And in fact, some of participants here are our partners already, like Unpap Medan, like Stipada Palembang. Then we have some University Muhammadiyah, yeah. Then I mean, we are looking forward to have better connection, better collaborations in future. Thank you again, Prof. Stefan. Thank you, Prof. Ida. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Yeah, Dr. Zahidul Islam. I hope we have a very good session, and I just want to remind those who have not filled up the form, this is for the purpose of e-certificate. We are going to send you once it is ready, and perhaps for future future network, inshallah. That will be all for today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure meeting you all. Thank you very much.
All.
Yeah.
And
thank you,
Professor Parsoni, thank you very much to you and Zahidul Islam for helping organizing this, and thank you very much for your moderation. It's always a pleasure to work together with you, and I hope that next year we will meet again in an offline way, not only online.
Yes, true.
That we can intensify our collaboration, which is really very successful in my eyes. Thank you so much, and also to Professor Ida and all the participants. Thank you very much.
And you too, Prof. Koos. It's such a pleasure having you around. Thank you very much.
Okay, let us finish end this session with reciting Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin.
Alhamdulillah.
Thank you for all the participations, and we shall end here. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you.
And good morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great, Prof. Yeah, we have a good number, a good like 39 people at one time. Yeah, 39 people at one time. It was fine. Great. And yes, let me now stop the recording.